Call to order this Thursday, July 11th, 2013, meeting of the Indian River County Planning Commission. Can we all stand for the pledge? Mr. Rednauer, would you lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, I'd like to welcome our new county attorney, Dylan Reingold.
Hopefully I'm better at this tonight than I was at Tuesday with the microphone. I'm just really honored to be here. Probably haven't met many of you or any of you before tonight, but I'd actually, in grad school, I lived in Melbourne, and Indian River County funded my research project, which was to study the pep reefs and the fish and fouling communities around the pep reefs in the mid-'90s. So it was really wonderful to get an opportunity for my wife and I to return to Indian River County. And I actually had worked in Jacksonville for 8+ years, serving as the last 3 years as the chief land use and zoning attorney for the city of Jacksonville. So land use and planning and zoning are matters near and dear to my heart, and I'm just very excited to be here.
We're most glad to have you. Next order of business is the meetings. The approval of meeting from 2013, July 13th. Can I get a motion to approve?
No.
Need a second? Motion by Mr. Rednauer, seconded by Jordan. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes carry, unanimous. Next item on the agenda is DeVasta Homes LP request for preliminary plan development PD approval for Phase 6 of Waterway Village to be known as the Cove at Waterway Village, PD-13-08-02/ 2004-010-124-70823. This matter is quasi-judicial. Anybody who would like to speak at this matter, please stand up and be sworn in. Nobody would like to speak on it. Okay. I'd like to turn it over to staff.
First, John McCoy with the planning staff. This is a consent agenda item. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions that y'all may have. Otherwise, yes?
No, I don't. I'm good.
Okay. Any other questions? Any questions from staff? Okay. Can I get a motion?
Sure.
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
To the chair, and this is obviously a new process here on the quasi-judicial items and the consent items for myself. John, I just had a question. I know there are 2 conditions associated with this approval. Was the applicant agreeable with these conditions?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
I will make a formal motion to approve staff's recommendations on this matter.
Second. Motion by Mr. Edmonds, seconded by Jordan. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes carried unanimously. Okay. Next item on the agenda is Providence Point, Vero Beach, LLC request to rezone approximately 186.33 acres from Ag 1, Agricultural 1, up to 1 units per 5 acres, and RS3 residential single family, up to 3 units per acre, to a planned development traditional neighborhood design, PDTND, and to obtain a conceptual plan development plan approval for a project to be known as Providence Point, 2004-110-70350/PD-13-04-01. And at this time, I'll turn it over to staff.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Brogdon. John McCoy with the planning staff. And before I start my presentation, I'd like to point out I did hand out a supplemental recommendations, just changing a typo, correcting a typo, and adding a little definition of one condition. I would like to also verbally point out on condition number 7, the word ultimate should be struck, and it should be 120 feet rather than ultimate. So with those noted for the record, I'd like to proceed with the presentation. And this is a conceptual PD plan and rezoning. It's as far as this is the initial process in the development process. As far as the process goes, we are on the path that's on the left side of the screen. So this is a conceptual plan. The Planning and Zoning Commission is to make a recommendation after a public hearing to the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners is the body of final action, also at a public hearing. If this is approved, we'll proceed to the right-hand side of the screen, and that's what we did earlier this evening with Waterway Village, was a preliminary PD approval. And all of the preliminary PDs will come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, so you all will have another chance to review this project again in phases with greater detail. So you all will see this again as it goes through the project, or the process, excuse me. It'll become better defined as we get through the process. Things like environmental permits will be obtained prior to the issuance of a land development permit, and those things again will come into to greater focus. As far as the location of this subject site, it's bounded on three sides by thoroughfare plan roads. On the north side, it's bounded by 53rd Street. On the east side, it's bounded by 58th Avenue, and on the south side by 49th Street. You can see the zoning of the subject property and the surrounding properties. A1 is agricultural, RS3 is residential, single family up to 3 units per acre. Waterway Village is to the east of the subject site. It is zone PD plan development, and again went through a very similar process. The blue line you see on the screen is the urban service boundary, and this particular subject site is located right excuse me, at the corner of the urban service boundary. All of the property south of 49th Street is inside the urban service area, and all of the property to the east of the blue line is inside the urban service area. The aerial shows the physical features of this site very well, and I'll just take a second, take the mouse. The agricultural property to the east is all improved pasture. The lake, which is an old sand mine, is one of the largest physical features of the site. The area around it's improved pasture with some trees and brush. You can see some of the ditches that are on the eastern portion of the site. And again, as you get north, it's improved pasture. There's a little bit of remnant grove. And then as you get to the northwest corner, that's where most of the native upland area is. And it's primarily pine flatwood with some pine trees and just grass, but then more typical pine flatwoods with palmettos and some other vegetation in there. But that's the predominant area of the native uplands. As far as just some of the numbers associated and features associated with the project, it is 186 acres. It's 481 residential units. It includes a 57-room hotel, 72,000 square feet of commercial building area, a 9-hole golf course, and a community clubhouse and recreation area. As far as the site plan and how it lays out, this is the proposed conceptual PD plan. Again, the lake is a large physical feature existing that was factored into the land plan. In the northeast corner of the subject site, southeast corner of 58th and 57th, are the commercial buildings and commercial uses, and those are in red on the plan. The hotel site is just to the south of that at this location, and the most dense or intense residential developments are to the north in this area and along the south and east property lines. As you get to the south side of the lake and to the west side of the lake, these are all what would be considered single-family style homes in this area. And then the golf course to the east of that, the clubhouse and recreational amenities are located pretty much in the center or core of the plan. I just want to briefly go over the waivers associated with the plan. And the waivers are essentially to facilitate the physical type of building that will be done. There are 9 types of residential units, and those lot sizes vary from 1,100 square feet to 10,000 square feet. The 1,100 square foot lot is for a townhome type, a very compact style of development, and the 10,000 square foot's similar to a conventional single-family lot in our RS6 or RS3, right between those two. As far as internal setbacks, and again, that's interior of the project, excluding the perimeter buffers and things like that, will vary from a 15-foot front yard for the house and a 0 foot for the porch, stoop, and things like that that are justified towards the street, with 0 to 10-foot side yard setbacks and 0 to 35-foot rear yard setbacks. Townhomes will mostly have a 0 setback where there'll be a common wall, and the commercial units will be site planned. And those through the site plan process, you'll see the store footprint, the sidewalk, landscaping, and other site-related improvements such as parking and things like that. This is a phasing plan, and really there are 3 phases to this plan. What you see in blue is phase 1, and that includes the lakes, all of the stormwater system in phase 1. There are 3 subphases within phase 1 as you work through that phase 1A, B, and C, and those are labeled on there. Then you get to phase 2, which is in green, and again, that's most of the residential area and the hotel site within phase 2. When you get to phase 3, it's really the commercial infill, so the bulk of the development is going to be in phase 1 and the subphases in phase 2 and those subphases. With the dedications and improvements, one of the major improvements will be the continuation of 53rd Street in its present alignment west of 58th Avenue. And that's covered in a developer's agreement, and that's where that 120 feet of right-of-way will be dedicated. They need to dedicate additional right-of-way for 58th Avenue and 49th, and they've agreed to that. They need to pave their frontage of 49th Street. They also need to pave a portion of 53rd Street to their project entrance. They need to escrow for the remainder of the 53rd Street frontage that they're not paving, and they need to provide stormwater treatment for 49th, 53rd, and 58th Avenue improvements, providing, and they'll also be providing access improvements and sidewalk improvements along 49th Street and 58th Avenue. Additional dedications and improvements will be off-site access improvements. And these are primarily turn lanes at their major access points. And then they'll also be required to do notice and plant restrictions because of their proximity to the agricultural area. And those will be notices that will be recorded to put people on notice when they when they're purchasing. I'd like to step through the buffer plan, and I'll use the mouse for this just for illustration purposes. There are really 3 types of buffers proposed. There's a type B buffer, and that's what's shown on the south property line, just a conventional type B buffer without a 6-foot opaque feature. Again, there's a substantial amount of landscape within that buffer. Then as you go up 58th Avenue, the darker green is a type B buffer with a 6-foot opaque feature. As you get to the north adjacent to the lakes, again, it's just a standard type B without the 6-foot opaque feature, allowing for some view shed through, although there's a substantial amount of vegetation. And then as you go along the north perimeter and the western portion of the north half, it's a type B buffer with a 6-foot opaque feature, and it actually widens out just a little bit in here to 30 feet wide in places. And then you get to the 50-foot wide type B buffer. Again, a similar amount of vegetation, just a little bit wider. And on the next slide, I'll just quickly go over some of the distinctions in the buffer type. Again, 50-foot with a type B. It's planted at grade, and the plants meet the minimum height specifications. As far as the type B buffer without the 6-foot opaque feature in the 25, again, the plant's minimum height, same density of planting in both of these as far as numbers of the 25-foot type Bs, but for the 6-foot opaque feature, there's a low berm and actual shrub heights increased to provide that 6-foot opaque feature. And those are the differences as you go around the different buffer types and sections. Traffic circulation, just a couple things I'd like to discuss here, and this mainly the different road types. What you see in blue are roads that are open to the public. So the public can go from 53rd Street to 49th Street without ever having to get to 58th Avenue if you're coming from the west. And the blue area are streets that are open to the public, so you can circle the lake. The crosshatched is open to the public from a pedestrian standpoint. So what you see crosshatched are pedestrian accessible. The yellow or orange dots that you see are actually gates, and those are control points where it's residents only beyond those points. So the orange and the red roads are for residential use only, for residents use only. And just let me walk around and I'll talk about the access points. And let me start at the west portion of 49th Street. This will be an access point to 49th Street driveway for residents only. As we come to the east, the eastern access point of 49th Street will be for residents and for the public. And this will be served by a right turn lane, a westbound right turn lane. As we round the corner, what will be one of the main access points will be on 58th, and this will be a full movement, and it'll be served by a right turn lane. Left turn lane is a full movement driveway. Another minor driveway on 58th Avenue, which is a right in, right out, and also a minor driveway on 53rd Street, which is right in, right out. And then another what will become a major driveway on the north side on 53rd Street. And it'll be a full movement driveway served by a left in at this point. So that's generally the internal circulation plan and exterior off-site or site-related improvements. As far as public benefits, these include the right-of-way dedications, public access through the site from 49th to the 53rd, the public vehicular access to the sites within the stormwater treatment for 49th and 53rd and 58th Avenue, preserving the native upland areas and restoring the native upland areas beyond the minimums, the lakeside amphitheater, and the transit stops, which the applicants coordinated through the MPO. As far as the environmental issues go, and there be a lot more definition of this as we go through the preliminary plat process, but essentially from an overview on the environmental issues, there is an eagle. There are a couple listed, actually 4 listed species that were picked up on the environmental survey. These included a bald eagle that is using the site, some gopher tortoise use of the site, wood stork that forage on the site, and blue herons that also forage on the site. And in the applicant's habitat management plan, they'll be essentially mitigating for some of the habitat impact, and then basically doing a habitat management plan for other portions of it. They'll also be addressing the county's environmental criteria, which are getting a wetlands resource permit for the work they're doing, and then also addressing the native upland set aside and conserving the actually more than what's required as far as the code goes. And there'll be more detail with the preliminary PDs. With that, I would like to get to staff's recommendation. And staff does recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the Board of County Commissioners approve the Providence Point PD with the conditions in the staff report as amended. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Yes, there are. In looking at your analysis on page 4 of your memo, John, I was looking at the issue of allowed commercial uses, and was struck by hotel and proposed PD district. Obviously, it's permitted under conditions, but when you look at the existing zoning, it's not allowed. Can you just provide some guidance on that specific point?
Correct. Through the planned development, PD, TND, there is an allowance for commercial uses up to a certain point, and those commercial uses are pulled from our commercial zoning districts,
Sure.
which would be similar to the, in this case, the limited commercial district, which would allow a lodging facility.
Yeah.
And at that point, it gets back to scope and scale.
Okay.
Any other questions? Would the applicant like to come forward and speak?
John, can you hit the browser on that? Should be.
There you go. It's going to switch over.
Oh, is it? Okay. Just get this right.
That mouse should be.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning and Zoning. Andrew Kennedy is my name, 2050 U.S. Highway 1 address. I wanted to take you through just an aerial overview of the project, but first wanted to thank staff. It's always a nice thing when rewarding experience when you get to this level, and they've been working very hard on this, and it's been a long time in the making. In terms of agenda, I'd like to, as I said, go through the project team, aerial overview of the project, and just go ahead and get started. I'll keep it as brief as possible. I am actually speaking on behalf of the owner, Mr. Brill, who had a family obligation engagement, but he is indeed the owner. It is a local project. He has a residence here, and he's got a very unique background in development, a lot of mixed-use projects that he's done. And the great part about it is he starts in the beginning and he takes them all the way through. So construction, property acquisition, property management, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very exciting project to be involved in. Proctor Construction, Collier Crawford, represented by Donald Proctor, myself and Ronald DeHessler, we've started looking into the infrastructure costs, and it's full bore ahead. We have Joe Schulke from Schulke, Biddle and Stoddard, Brian Good from Kimley Horn, and Chris Sapotnik from ECF, our environmental consultant. We also have Cooper Johnson Smith, who came up with the architecturals, and Mr. Todd Bonnet, who came up with the land plan. He's got a lot of experience with this type of product, T&D type communities. And then we have Bruce Barquette, Collins Brown, Caldwell Barquette, Garavaglia, and Lawn. And they'll be able to field any questions that would be applicable to their profession. So getting started, this interactive overview, start with the hotel and spa. You can see, and as John mentioned, 57 luxury suite hotel. It'll be full service. It is a boutique hotel, a non-flagged hotel. You'll see from the finishes that it's higher end, and we'll be overlooking that lake frontage. Over to the Lake Club. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy on this, but I couldn't slow that particular part down. It's going to have, it'll be on the north part. It's going to have all the amenities for the residents. I put a sampling on there, but the recreational use of the lake will be tremendous. This is a sampling of the residences. I'll zero in on one of these. You'll see they're beautifully appointed. We have a eagle habitat set aside. We have a nesting pair, which you'll see, and they were successful in fledgling. Osprey platform erected in a marsh area. I put some imagery in here to garner how it's going to be, the ospreys and everything else. A lot of walking trails. And lastly, the marketplace, where we have an assortment of uses, gourmet grocery store, art gallery, retail, movie theater, art classes, and so on and so forth. The public benefits that Mr. McCoy mentioned, I thought I'd put some in as well. I mean, obviously we're looking at a lot of employment opportunity We've got the hotel, any management and real estate rentals, hotel, the lake club, staffing, property management, golf course maintenance, and management. Obviously, you've got your sales tax, gas tax, bed tax, county tax base. Really, one of the more important ones is if you've been out to that 53rd and 58th intersection, it jogs severely to the south as you travel west. And in addition to that, culverting that canal, stormwater improvements, and then there'll be, these traditional neighborhood design communities evoke, the Lake Amphitheater, concerts, art classes, and the like. With that brief overview, I'll open up for any questions that anybody has, but suffice it to say it's a very exciting project, and we're very excited to be involved in it. So thank you for the time.
Any questions? Would anybody else like to come up and speak?
Thank you. Forgive me if I don't follow protocols. I'm just a resident of the area. I live in Waterway Village.
I'm not very good at it either.
Oh, you're doing a fine job. And the comment, I've just had the online access to the website that's got some pictures that are not terribly clear. I am concerned as a resident of that area. We have a traffic intersection at 53rd and 58th. The project appears to be adding 2 more intersections onto 58th, which is a fairly heavily trafficked road. And I'm not sure why the developer would not want to access from 53 and 49, similar to what was done in Waterway Village. And so my concern is the traffic implications of that particular area on 58.
Would the applicant like to address that question?
Thank you.
Just my pleasure, sir.
Brian Good, Kimley Horn and Associates. Is there a site plan, John, that you can pull up? Okay. There are 2 driveways being proposed on the 58th Avenue. The northernmost driveway just south of 53rd Street is limited to a right-in, right-out only vehicular connection to 58th Avenue. The southernmost, or the one that falls more midway into the project, is a full access median opening with 58th Avenue. We worked with staff spacing that intersection far enough south as to not impact or interfere with the operational characteristics at 53rd. And then the auxiliary lane improvements at the intersections that were spoken to have been proposed and are identified in the staff report.
And at that point, Mr. Keating, there'll be a full concurrency, correct?
Actually, we did a conditional concurrency analysis, and Brian, you can confirm that the added traffic, even with the added traffic, levels of service will be maintained.
That is correct.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Brogdano, I think also their traffic engineer may be able to speak to this, that the applicant, one of the proposed improvements is a traffic signal at 49th Street and 58th Avenue, which should help provide some gaps and some relief for that north-south traffic volume and give people breaks in the traffic and provide additional safety for that immediate area.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Sir, I'm going to ask the gentleman to come back up. But
yes, Bob Walsh, also from Waterway Village. I want to go a little bit further on the traffic, and then I have 2 other questions. You're spending a lot of money to widen 66 coming up through, and I'm assuming that 66 will then meet a improved 53rd, which will carry traffic from 60 up 66 over 53rd to Indian River Boulevard or up 1. Right now, we almost need a light at 49th and 58th. It's been a problem, and you can't get out. My question is, you're taking 471 homes plus a 58-room hotel plus a lot of other stuff. Waterway Village is going to be expanding. I would not like to get to a point where we were forced to put a traffic light opposite your main entrance on coming off of 58th. You take the additional traffic from Waterway Village, the additional traffic that's now starting to come over from Indian River Boulevard, and the 4 lanes coming up 66. And, you know, why did Waterway Village have to build 53rd and build 51st Court and have no access onto 58th?
Well, that would be a question that would be beyond me. That would have been a decision rendered by the County Board of Commissioners.
I'm not trying to put upon you. I'm trying to say that the mere fact that someone decided that it's going to, the level of service is going to be all right, I agree with that now. You have to plan for the future. I'd like to see if a traffic study was done planning for the future with a full build out of everything. If they can still make those statements, then it might be easy to believe.
Oh, is it possible to keep this gentleman informed throughout the process?
Yeah, we will, but we don't do a build-out traffic analysis. We don't look at what the situation is going to be if every possible piece of property in the county is going to be built out. What we look at is we look at the development that's already been approved. Those are vested trips. We look at existing trips that are on the road, and we look at trips from this development project. And that's the analysis that's done for this project. But separately, we do long-range planning, and we have a 2035 plan. It's done by the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is essentially part of the county. And we have improvements programmed, and this development is consistent with the anticipated development that we're going to have in the next 25 years to 2035. So even though when a traffic analysis is done for a project like this, we don't look at build-out conditions, we do separately engage in long-range planning that does reflect this and other projects that will be built in the next 20, 25 years.
Okay. Well, even so, in the same vein, I guess as we're proceeding forward, keep this gentleman informed.
Sure.
I'd greatly appreciate it.
Correct.
Thank you for. Yes, sir.
I'll go ahead and point out one immediate project-related item is they are accommodating the stormwater for an expansion to 58th Avenue, and they are dedicating right-of-way for the expansion to 58th Avenue. One of the waterway improvements that's scheduled through their development and regional impact, they are monitoring the 58th Avenue segment between essentially 53rd Street and 49th, and will be at some point responsible for widening that to a 4-lane section, which will provide some relief for that area as well.
So what you're saying by the development is that it will actually improve traffic flow in this area?
I'm not saying that it'll improve. I'm saying they're accommodating with the right-of-way dedication, with the stormwater, the ability to widen 58th Avenue and have a greater capacity for 58th Avenue and plan for future growth.
Maybe that's a question for the applicant after development. Do you anticipate that the traffic flow would be improved with the build-out?
The short answer is yes. The gentleman identified the traffic signal or a need of a traffic signal at 58th Avenue and 49th Street. Presently, there's a flasher. We've concurred, the applicant has agreed to not only construct a temporary signal, which would be operational at the beginning of the project, but the applicant's also contributing funds to the ultimate build-out that would accompany the widening of 58th Avenue between 49th and 53rd. So in concert with all the off-site and site access improvements that are planned, we do feel that it will improve traffic flow in the corridor.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, now to go on to my original questions, and these are just questions for how things operate. I'm familiar with how they operate in New York State, but not down here. You also said like a concept approval tonight. I would like to know what you define a concept approval as.
A concept approval is a plan similar to this. What the concept approval does is it defines the limits of the entitlements, meaning the intensity of the overall project, the uses, the amounts, the quantities, and then is a graphic representation as well as to how they will lay out location, compatibility, those types of issues are addressed. As we go to the next step, the geometry will be nailed down as to physically the size of the lots, how far from the perimeter, the setbacks, all that will be defined down to the tenth of a foot in that respect. At this level, that's not done, but it does lay out the amounts of the entitlements, the conditions. Traffic work is done based on the maximum amount of the entitlements proposed.
So to summarize, we're looking at scope and intensity for phase one?
For the entire site.
And then it would come back to the P&Z if it was approved by the County Board of Commissioners.
Correct.
Is that correct?
And let me just, for public's benefit, walk through the process.
That'd be great.
This is the first of the public hearings. There'll be a second public hearing before the Board of County Commissioners where they'll also consider this very same plan. If these residents received a notice of this meeting, they should receive a notice of that meeting. If the board approves it, then as the individual phases of the preliminary PDs are submitted, they would be reviewed by staff and then come back before this board.
Great.
Okay, so then your concept does not affix the total number of units guaranteed or the road entrance guaranteed. It's still in for further review based on more engineering.
It does establish those maximums and those locations as far as that goes, because that was the basis of the traffic impact analysis, is the maximum request for those entitlements and establishing those entry points then necessitated various off-site improvements as to where those entry points were going to be located. It generated the trip split and things like that that would result in various off-site improvements.
So therefore, it would just be further refined as we go along through the process.
Correct, and we'll make sure that the subset or the phase is consistent with the overall conceptual plan.
Thank you.
Okay, my last question is, once the PDD, whatever your initials are down there, up north there, PDD and PRD, once they're approved, without additional approval, the developer cannot change the uses within the project. I'm just going to throw a weird example.
That's correct.
He can't, after he gets approval, decide, I don't want 481 homes, I want to put 480 8-foot wide trailers in there.
Yeah, he would not be able to do that.
That's what I'm saying, that the PDD is going to be based on this concept. Any deviation in use, I'll call use, would require additional approval.
That's correct.
Okay. Based on that, I personally am in favor of the project, and I want you to think I was against it. I am concerned about 58th, 53rd, and 49th because we live there.
Understandable.
And it's a nice area, and we're starting to see the problems at 49th. I look forward to the completion of 66, and I just want to make sure we don't mess things up.
No. And thank you for your input this evening.
Thank you.
And
good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. Joseph Paladin, President of Black Swan Consulting and Entitlement Corp. I've built several developments over the past 15 years here in this county, and I know all the gentlemen that's affiliated with this project. And you got the A-team here. Joe Schulke's done over 14 projects for me. He's probably the best engineer I've ever worked with. Don Proctor, without a doubt, the best builder developer I've ever been affiliated with. Andrew Kennedy, I know personally. This is the A-team, guys. Brian Good, nobody better. I think the project's an excellent project. These are team players. They're local people. They live here. They employ local people. They care about the neighborhood. They care about the county. And they're going to do the best job and work as a team. And I strongly urge you to approve this project and move it on to the next level. I support them 100%. Thank you very much.
thank you, Mr. Paladin.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
My name is Jim Fallon. I live on off 49th Street in Lindsay Pines, right across from the proposed development. I just had a couple questions on what's going to happen to 49th Street that I'm not 100% sure I saw on the slide. Is there a way we could put that back up, please? Question on the two entrances that are on 49th Street. I understand the first one that's closest to 58th is residents only that come out, or is public access that comes out of that one, correct?
For the eastern one, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The second one is going to be for residents only further down 49th Street.
Correct.
Where does that come in at, or where does that come out at onto 49th Street? Because, and I'll tell you why. My concern is 49th Street is not a great street. I've lived there for almost 10 years now. It was a dirt road, and we now got millings on it, but it has a lot of traffic. And we get a lot of citrus traffic that comes from US 1 that comes down 49th to get onto 66. So my concern is the amount of traffic that's going to come out of this development, as well as what comes out of 61st Court, 61st Circle, and the traffic that comes east and west on 49th Street from the citrus factories to get over to 66. Unless it's going to be widened, 49th Street is going to be a mess.
In one moment, let staff take a look at this.
Okay. Right, and I have a couple of things I think I can explain here. This is just a little bit west, I believe, of the subject subdivision that's in question. The county will be paving 49th Street from 66th Avenue to the east, and will stop just basically shy of the west property line of the subject site. And the county is looking to get a little bit of right-of-way in advance, possibly, to transition that. The applicant will be responsible for paving the remainder of 49th Street in a future phase, I believe, 1B. Now, and that will improve the condition because, as the gentleman stated, 49th Street does get a fair amount of traffic. It has been incrementally improved over the years, but there's still substantial, or there's still improvements to be done to make it a completely paved road. And the county's going to do the first half with the 66th Avenue, and then the applicant should do the rest. And the access point is just to the, I believe, just to the west of the subject subdivision. And once the 66th Avenue job is complete, it should be in advance of this. And that may encourage more people from this particular site to go west and go down 66th Avenue and go to the mall that way.
Any further questions, sir?
No, I think that does. That was the 49th Street is my concern because I live there. And does it show where that comes out at? Does it come out at 61st Court or 61st Circle, or because it gets tight there?
It does, and I just have to take a couple minutes here and take a closer. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fallon. Would anybody else like to speak? Is there any further questions of staff?
I just had one question. It's similar to the last one. It's just a thing of habit, I guess. I just wanted to make sure that the applicant had agreed to all the conditions plus the changed conditions as presented to staff.
That is correct.
Well, I mean, in the analysis that was
close the public hearing, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. The public hearing is closed.
Thank you. In the analysis that was presented to us and that was also presented this evening, it appears there's questions related to traffic only, but overall the benefits would certainly come to the community. So it's something that I would be in favor of.
Mr. Keating, just what is your feeling on this project? Is this a project you feel you can fully support?
Oh, yeah. We've been working with the applicant team for probably a year. We worked with Mr. Bonnet on another great project that was designed, Liberty Park. We've been intimately involved in the design. We think it is really good. It's got a lot of T&D characteristics. It's mixed use. I think it's the right project in the right place. We're completely and totally supportive of
You
it.
feel comfortable with the people they've put together?
Oh,
moving
yeah.
forward?
Yeah, great team, like Mr. Paladin said.
Thank you, sir. Is there any more questions? If I could please get a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second? Motion to approve by Mr. Stewart, seconded by myself. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against? Okay, the ayes have it. 5-1. 5-0. Jeez, I'm so sorry. Next on the agenda is... Okay. Consideration of proposed land development regulation LDR amendment to section 911.151D, West County Industrial Park height exception. This matter is legislative.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Stan Bowling, County Planning Director. This is a land development regulation amendment, which means this public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission. We're looking for a recommendation to the board. At a future public hearing, the Board of County Commissioners will consider the ordinance and will have the ability to take action on the ordinance at that future public hearing. This request was recently initiated by the Board of County Commissioners. It was one of several economic development initiatives from Commissioner Zork that the board basically approved in concept, and staff has moved forward with this particular amendment. And it amends just one small section of the code, the West County Industrial Park height exception area, and it's needed to allow more tall distribution industrial buildings. Right now, that geographic area is very small, and there are no other ready-to-build sites in addition to the CVS distribution facility, which is out in the West County industrial area right now. Just a kind of a little bit of context, the county's existing height regulations generally limit buildings to 35-foot height, up to 50 feet for peaks and roof areas. There are exceptions in our code, and have been for many years, for steeples and chimneys and silos equipment, and there are just a few exceptions to the height, including the exception for buildings in large industrial parks west of I-95. I do want to apologize for the overexposed picture. I'll have to do better than this next time. But imagine, if you will.
What is that?
Yeah, what is that? This is the quiz for this evening, right? What are we looking at? This is in Indian River County. And a few years ago, when the height exception was looked at for tall buildings, we looked at the U1 right there. Yes, this is the hospital, Indian River Medical Center, I guess it's known as now. And really, probably the only really prominent taller building on a pretty large campus. And really, this was sort of the example that was used in looking at allowing the exception. And just to give you an idea of what you're looking at here, if you can, again, imagine what you're looking at. This is from the south side of 37th Street on the north side of the hospital campus, about 350 feet away from where this picture was taken. You can see some of the more recent landscaping that they put in, and 70-foot tall buildings to the corner of these patient towers. And then, if you could see, the middle of the building is actually up to 85 feet. And that was allowed by a building height exception granted in 1973. But it's an example of a taller structure on a large parcel of land. And it was an example that was used back in 2004 when the West County height exception was put into the ordinance. And it was done back in 2004 for the CVS distribution center. A number of modern distribution centers use taller ceilings with their automated rack systems that go very high, and CVS is one of those. It's restricted to the west of I-95, 100-acre minimum industrial park areas, and the existing regulations have a setback of 2,000 feet from I-95, 1,000 feet from State Road 60, and 200 feet from industrial park perimeters. And the existing areas that could potentially fall under this exception are in the crosshatched area, and you have a graphic like this in your packet. I-95 being this kind of gray area here, State Road 60 going east and west or left to right. And the setbacks are meant to push the larger buildings back from generally public areas, to put them into a larger context, and they're more aesthetically blending into the environment, more appropriate in those areas. Again, these are potential areas, and I wanted to just take a closer look here at this graphic, which is also in your backup, to show that the existing setbacks, once those are taken into account, and this is the CVS facility, kind of shadowy. This is the building itself, on a much larger parcel overall. You really could not get another CVS distribution center onto the industrial park site right now because of the setbacks. And this is one of the reasons I believe this is an economic development initiative from the Board of County Commissioners. I think the experience with CVS has been very good. That Indian River County, especially in this particular area, is probably a good target area. We could anticipate that other distribution facilities could come in and have a need for building heights for a number of reasons that we outlined in our report, the access and the land use and so forth in this particular area. But again, with this setback of 1,000 feet from State Road 60, there's really just no way to put it in that, any others in that park. The existing center was built in 2006, CVS, 350,000 square feet. The main portion, the tall portion of the building is 68 feet, and it's actually 1,500 feet from State Road 60 and just over 600 feet from 98th Avenue. And this is an aerial of just from a couple of years ago of the overall industrial park. And this is a CVS facility, State Road 60 here to the bottom and 98th Avenue to the east of it. This is a picture from State Road 60, and again, in this context, over 1,500 feet from State Road 60, the 68-foot tall building is not imposing. Although I will point out in this picture, one thing that's kind of been disappointing, in a manner of speaking, the industrial park has not been finished off, and so there's not been a perimeter buffer put along State Road 60 like will be required when that development is finished, that industrial park. CVS was actually a part of the park that was on the north part, and so there was no obligation to do landscaping along this part of State Road 60. So this is just, a bare setback approach, and it's a really good kind of test case that you can see there. Actually, I think aesthetically speaking, if you go out and look at the facility closer, 600 feet away, from 98th Avenue, and actually 98th Avenue is here. If I actually took this picture from the 98th Avenue that runs in front of CVS, you'd see nothing but trees in this particular area. There was a Type C buffer with mature landscaping required when CVS went in. It's done a nice job. And actually, this kind of test case has convinced staff that a nice buffer put in up front with the taller building with setbacks that are less than 1,000 feet actually do a really good job, aesthetically speaking, for these types of structures. What is proposed in the ordinance that's attached to your backup is to reduce the setback from State Road 60 from 1,000 feet to 500 feet. And that's really the major change there, with the addition that not only there be that setback, but there be the special buffer put in, unless there's an intervening building, because there could be just a regular sized building, and then it would be the taller building would completely block from view if there were an intervening building from State Road 60. And that would open up, if adopted, probably 2 more sites in the industrial park that could allow for the building portion of a distribution facility. And then, of course, parking areas for the facility could be outside of that special setback, because setback only applies to the taller portions of the distribution facilities. Again, the amendment would limit the area to west of I-95, 100-plus acre industrial parks or subdivisions. We did propose in the ordinance that it can be a single subdivision or industrial park, or it could be a group of such parks, because the important thing is the context, how much land in an industrial area. Continue to apply the 2,000-foot setback from I-95 and a 200-foot setback from 98th Avenue. There's also a proposal to replace just a standard 200-foot perimeter setback with a special buffer and also a graduated setback to actually structure a greater setback depending on how tall the building is. And actually putting in a ratio there of an additional 4-foot horizontal setback for every 1 foot above the normal height limitation. And what that will mean is if someone comes in, for instance, for a 50-foot tall building, they won't be required to set back as much as, say, an 80-foot tall building, and that, we think, makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the proposed ordinance, and staff's recommendation is that the board, is that the P&Z recommend that the board adopt the proposed amendment. And I will say that as part of staff's research, we did visit recently and talk to the directors and managers out at the CVS facility, and they did express the belief that the 80 feet probably would accommodate any sort of facility that would come here. So we've structured things accordingly. Be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Have we had any inquiries on development?
We have not specifically to the point of looking at ceiling heights, just kind of general discussions. There are different types of facilities, distribution facilities. Cold storage seems to be not need the type of heights that products such as CVS would use, and there's quite a difference in ceiling heights. But this would certainly accommodate another one, and the people at CVS would see no reason why somebody else would not be. They believe that somebody else will be interested in this area because of the transportation facilities, the access to South Florida and the West Coast. And actually, without any prompting from planner types, they said the land use setup is really good there. You don't have a lot of residents close by that they don't want conflicts either, and they think the park is well situated for that.
So to summarize, the existing exception's just a bit too narrow?
I think so, and it was a new step that was taken in 2004. I think it worked well. We were probably overly cautious just to make sure that it worked, and I think the test has proven out.
Okay.
Any further questions? Anybody from the public like to speak?
Mr. Paladin?
Okay.
I think you guys got it.
Public hearing is closed. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Rudenauer, seconded by Mrs. Calderon. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Next order of business, Commissioners' Matters. Does anybody have anything they'd like to speak about? Okay. Moving on, Planning Matters.
Just two items, Mr. Chairman. Since your last meeting, the Board of County Commissioners took actions on two items. Just wanted to make sure you all were aware of. At their June 18th, the Board took a look at the proposed ordinance that would do two things. One is increase the height of commercial vehicles, and the other is to give more flexibility to the length of RVs in residential areas. The Board declined to adopt any changes to the commercial vehicle height. There were a number of residents that expressed concerns, and they did allow the changes and move forward with the changes to the RV length. So we revised the ordinance, and they adopted it. So commercial vehicle height stays at 9 feet in residential areas, and the RV length goes beyond 32 feet now. Also, at their July 2nd meeting, the board looked at the Vero Estates mixed-use comp plan changes to allow upfront commercial development mixed use, and they adopted that, and the parallel land development regulation amendment changes. So both of those are approved, and we expect to see more mixed-use projects now. We think we'll be seeing them fairly soon, which means you may be seeing them fairly soon.
It's good to see some activity in the county.
There is more happening.
Yeah.
I will say that this may be the only meeting that we have in July, but we do have an August 8th meeting that we certainly will have the next one. That will be the next meeting. And that's all that I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. County Attorney's Matters?
Nothing from my office, just excited to be here. I've heard such wonderful things about the Bob, Stan, John combination. I'm just excited to work with them and excited to be here working with this board and the County Commission.
We definitely enjoy your enthusiasm. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.